The iPhones are dead in terms of innovation. The last iPhone I had was iPhone 6.
Like I always love the interface, that's why I've used it for the past 10 years.
I have a MacBook since 2015 and it works just fine, honestly. For me, the iPad has always been great to watch movies. I always thought the ecosystem was way superior to the others, honestly.
Well, I own an Apple Watch, a MacBook Pro, Apple TV. I mean, what do I not own about Apple?
Hello guys, Techinthehouse here for another live stream. So welcome to everyone who's already on this live stream. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe. So as you've seen by the title, today we'll be discussing a very controversial topic, which is Apple brainwashing its fans or loyal customers? Well, that's debatable, and that's exactly what we'll be doing today. So just to clarify, this is the title of a video by a YouTube channel called Future Proof, and basically we'll be reacting to that video and making comments, important comments throughout the video, and hopefully we can reach to a conclusion, either the same conclusion of the video or something else different. We'll see how many good points the video can make in favor of Apple brainwashing fans, I suppose, but we'll see. It might be clickbait, it might be a title that is misleading us into thinking something, and then the video actually is defending the opposite. So it's gonna be a very interesting live stream. Stay tuned, then grab your popcorn and get ready to get your opinion out there, because as always, you guys are free to comment down below your thoughts on the chat. Please comment anything that you want on the chat, or if you're watching this as a pre-recorded video, on the comment section down below. Buckle up tight, and we'll be starting soon. Thank you for being here with us once more, and hopefully we have a happy place filled with wonderful opinions, and we create for ourselves a wonderful debate. See you in a bit. Hello guys, so here we are back, completely fresh and ready for another amazing live stream to debate on the most important topics on the universe, technology related topics. Ha! So let me just see if I can set this properly and then we'll start. Give me just a second, yada yada yada, and here we are. Probably you guys can see now everything. You guys can see me, you guys can see the spectralizer which moves at the sound of my voice. Hopefully we're having a little awesome nice background music which I'll check in a minute to see if it's audible but not too loud, and we'll start in about a minute, so give me just a bit and I'll talk to you guys. Let me just make sure the setup is perfectly set up and we'll start. And yes, we are online and everything is ready. Okay, so as I've said earlier, and I'll just repeat it in a little sum up, 30-second sum up for anyone that has entered the live stream now. So basically today we'll be debating on the topic whether Apple's brand loyalty is a cult or not, whether Apple is brainwashing its fans or not. And yeah, this is basically inspired by this one video by the YouTube channel Future Proof, which we'll be reacting to and stopping at multiple times in the video to make comments and to debate opinions. So anyone watching either live or later has a pre-recorded video. Feel free to leave your opinion either on the chat or in the comment section down below. As always, this is an open space. We want to have an open debate because I'm very curious to know your thoughts and opinions, and let's make this interesting, let's make this fun, and hopefully we can reach a plausible conclusion, or maybe not. Maybe we'll end up with an ambiguous situation with two sides, we'll see. So I'm very curious. I can give a little introduction to my own opinion. So as far as I know, Apple does engage in some practices that are designed to enhance brand loyalty to extreme levels. However, even though they are absolutely culprit of that from my perspective, many other brands are culprit of that anyways to begin with. So I would say that that's something that any brand would aspire to do, and if there is one brand that isn't doing that, is because it can't in the first place, because if it were given the opportunity it would do. So if this video will be aimed at those practices, I would say that I would adopt the position of they're just normal practices that any business would love to apply when possible. So I would not hold them accountable in a bad light if that's what the video will be leaning at. But we don't know, so I'm very curious. And please, anyone in the comments, if you're watching, let me know what you think about what I've just said. Do you believe Apple engages in some practices to enhance consumer loyalty, but is it to extreme levels that you wouldn't agree with and that you think it's not fair, or is it everything that Apple does fair enough to maximize brand loyalty? But so this is just an introduction. We should watch the video to see exactly what they're talking about and what practices they'll be aiming at, if anything, if they will be aiming at practice. And so this is the live stream for today. Let's find out whether Apple is brainwashing its fans or not. Okay, let's just jump this ad. Let's see, just a second. Okay, let's just make sure everything is audible there at home for you guys. Here I can hear it just perfectly fine. Let's just make a little checkup sound. Give me 20 seconds and we'll be back. Okay, perfect. The sound is awesome. So you guys ready? Here we go. Is Apple brainwashing its fans? Let's find out.
What you own and how you spend your money is one of the most powerful social tools that we have invented in our modern consumer society. People will make fun of a Ford owner in the comments of a video and then identify themselves as a Dodge guy in their Instagram bio. But one of the strongest and most prolific brand loyal groups in the world are Apple users. And as an Apple user, it's kind of dumb.
Okay, so far everything seems very plausible. We all know Apple is not only the most valuable company in the world, but also one of the most loyal fan bases created ever. So far so good. I agree with everything. Please, people watching, let me know in the comments if you agree with the video so far. I'd say it's a trivial fact that Apple's brand image is through the roof, is very high, is held in a very high regard, and it's even a status symbol. So far so good. But let's see how exactly did Apple build this stellar image that they have.
A huge thank you to Ground News for sponsoring today's video. How's my hair look? At the time of the releasing of this video, the latest iPhone is probably about to be announced. It's going to be better and greater than any iPhone before it. It's going to sell millions. It's going to be very, very popular. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great phone. Except, it's probably not going to be that great. Every year when the newest iPhone is released, there is a predictable wave of hype, big announcements and features that get covered across the internet.
It's a phone.
Okay, yes, this is something that happens with every single iPhone launched, and not really only just iPhones, but also any device launched, for example by Samsung. The hype, for many years at this point, the hype does not correspond to the device launched. Completely. The hype for whether the features or the design being advertised, it does not correspond to what actually happens when the device is launched, and sales talk by themselves. This iPhone, the iPhone 16, the one they're mentioning, the latest one, in terms of sales numbers, money figures, is doing not only worse than expected, but also worse than other previous older iPhones when they were launched. So that tells us something. But let's see if the video goes further into this, or if they start talking about brand loyalty.
But it's so much more. It is a camera.
Then, quickly after that, the opinions and outrage over how little has changed, how this is just a facelift from the year before, and how stupid people are for being Apple users. But those are just opinions, and
I have to stop here because there is something that I can't understand, at least not nowadays. Back in the days when the iPhone was a revolutionary gadget, you kind of understand why people would line up to go buy it. Obviously, it was something out of another world, basically. A device that had touchscreen and only one button and had a camera and could record videos, and it was of the size that could fit on your pocket. It was something never seen before. Up until iPhone 6, I could understand people lining up to buy the iPhone. But at this point, now, at the stage we are, people lining up to go buy a phone, I don't see it. I call that anything but just brand hype. It's not innovation, it's not progression, that's just pure hype and brand loyalty. And now, is that bad? Shouldn't that be like that? Maybe not. Is that a result of Apple's extreme practices to build their image? Maybe. But will the video dive into these questions? Well, let's see. I hope so, honestly.
And let's not forget that we're talking about the single most valuable company in the world, and most importantly, they retain more repeat customers than pretty well any other brand in any industry. Brand loyalty for this company is pretty well unmatched, and it tells us a lot about why brand loyalty works and how it kinda doesn't make any sense if you really start looking into it. Now, first off, I think we need to establish
this is actually a very important point. In terms, when they say retention, they mean that once a person is inside Apple's universe, Apple is one of the best companies at keeping those customers locked in. And that's not a coincidence, that's not my mistake, that's because of all the other, amongst all the tech ecosystem that exists, whether it's Samsung or Google or any other brands that also have ecosystems, maybe not as strong as Apple's, but just like Apple's, they are not as walled as Apple, in the sense that Apple really built a walled garden. Once you get an Apple device, you want to get it to perfectly work with other Apple devices, and that forces you to spend money. Like these days, if you buy an Apple Watch, you're literally buying something that guarantees that for the next 4 years you're gonna buy an Apple device, because the moment you switch brands, your Apple Watch will become useless, or if anything, it will lose 90% of its functionality, and that's not good. That's literally the definition of locking you down. But it's a strategy and it is allowed, so it has been disputed, especially lately with new European laws. There are European organizations who control these types of things, pointing fingers at Apple and demanding them to make the Apple Watch compatible with other devices, just like other brands also make their devices compatible with iPhones. But will that amount to anything at the end of the day? Will a law be passed that will force Apple to apply these measures? I would say maybe, because we have seen, at least in the past year, we have seen something like that happen with USB-C. Apple was forced to put USB-C on the latest iPhone. They didn't want to. They wanted to stick with Lightning port. Lightning port is the one port that Apple developed themselves, the first one to be able to for you to insert it from both sides, and it was awesome for God knows how many years. But yes, they were forced to switch it by European laws. So who knows? Maybe Europe will force them to make a change and make their at least accessories compatible or more functional with other brands, and that would be awesome. The consumers would thank, because I think that no people who uses Android actually despises Apple. I think Android users would be happy to use, for example, AirPods. So as long as the audio quality is good, I don't care if it's Apple or not. I'm happy to use it. So, but we'll see what will happen. And for the people watching at home, please let me know what you guys think of anything we've discussed so far.
There are really two different kinds of brand loyalty, and that there is a spectrum in between them. On one end of the spectrum, we have what I'm going to call emotional brand loyalty. It's connected to our childhood or our family or a positive memory or a feeling that we get when we have that thing. This is like you drinking Bud Light because your old man used to drink it. Then, on the other side of the spectrum is the practical brand loyalty, which is supposed to be more rational, but isn't actually. This is you drive a Toyota Prius because your whole family drives Toyotas and they've been really reliable and you trust the brand to make a product that is good. The Toyota reference there is actually mine. I drive a Toyota Prius because my parents and most of my entire family have bought Toyotas. So it feels like a weird part of our family identity at this point. But
okay, here they're making a very interesting point. It appears they're subdividing loyalty in two types of loyalty. The practical loyalty, which is based on practicality and actual usability, and more of an emotional loyalty, which is more related to how you feel about the brand. And that's, I would say that that's the part where it's more worked with advertisements. When you see people wearing an Apple Watch and smiling, or someone who were about to, I don't know, die of a heart attack and Apple Watch saved his life. So, and you see him smiling and telling his sad story, or people running very happy with an Apple Watch, or people taking awesome pictures. So it's basically the emotional part, and I would say Apple works with that a lot more than practicality and usability. It hasn't always been like this in the past, but increasingly, and especially in the latest 3 years in which the iPhone didn't really bring any major hardware changes, when they change software, they pair it with positive emotional responses, basically just happy people using the iPhone, because they really don't got anything else to use as a power move. For example, Samsung can use like that, we have 100 times zoom and you can see the moon, you can zoom the moon. So this makes it's a power move. They don't need to rely as much in human emotions, because they have actually something interesting that can trigger their emotions of wow, this is amazing. But we'll see. I would say yes, Apple works more with the emotional loyalty of the fans. But they also make here another interesting point, which is what he said about brands using families, right? Where he said like many members of one family using the same device, and this is huge, especially in America with Apple, in the sense that if one person has an iPhone, they use iMessage a lot basically, and iMessage is exclusive to the iPhone, and this means that if everyone in the family got an iPhone, they just have granted themselves perfect communication in between them. And if one of them were to switch to Android, then suddenly the perfect communication breaks apart. And that's huge. Not here in Europe. I mean, WhatsApp and Messenger are way more used, and they are cross platforms. They exist in either Android, iPhone, you name it, and they work perfectly fine. But if your whole family uses a device, either because they have a specific communication app like iMessage, or either because it's been a tradition in the family, I don't know, it is hard to switch, of course, and that works in favor of Apple in terms of loyalty. And this reminds me of another interesting topic which we've talked about in the past live stream, which also happens even inside the messaging app. Let's pretend that we all have different devices. Okay, so I have an Android, you have an iPhone, but we communicate with each other through WhatsApp, for example. So if I were to want to switch, not my phone, but the app even, I don't know, let's say I want to switch to Viber, which is another communication app, which is also kind of dead compared to like 6 years ago. But if I were to want to switch to it from WhatsApp to Viber, I would struggle in the sense that I would lose communication with you, because despite you having a different device, we were effectively communicating through the same app, and I would have to force you to switch to the same app. Now, if we are just two people, maybe I can convince you, and maybe we switch both to Viber and we start communicating in there. But the moment you start having a team with 30, 40 people, I don't know, to communicate about business, work, you can't make everyone switch to another platform. So I guess the higher the amount of people who engage with one another in the same platform or device, the harder it will be to switch, and the higher the loyalty. And this is an effect both in software with apps and also in hardware with the iPhone, because of the strategies that Apple applies. But it's a very interesting topic. I'm curious to see how further the video will go into this. So let's see.
At either end of this spectrum, there is a lot of mental gymnastics going on to try and convince ourselves of the choices that we make along the way. And brands understand that if they can get your loyalty, they've basically won the Consumer Olympics. Which brings us back to Apple. Apple is a $3 trillion company, worth more than a lot of countries, in large part because they have learned to play the long game. This has a name in the economics world called customer capitalism, and it's basically the radical idea that if you keep your customers happy, they will buy more of your product, which ends up providing more value to shareholders in the long run. If you're thinking this
Okay, I completely agree with this. This is true. Once you are inside the walled garden, or once you are accustomed to use a certain product, it's easier for you just to find reasons to stay in that product. Even if the people who made that product are actually messing up and you're finding flaws and it's getting annoying to you, it's easier to keep you there rather than they're making an effort to switch to another thing it has a different interface and a different form and you have to learn some things again. I think a lot of people would rather just continue on the same product despite some minor inconveniences. So once you're inside, it's harder to switch. And statistic talks by itself. The number of people who switch either from Android to iPhone or from iOS, or from iOS to Android is not that huge. It's a small amount of people. Most people stick with what they know. So is that brainwashing? No, I would say it's just human nature. But we'll see.
This sounds kind of obvious. Yes, it is. But you gotta understand, these are economists we're talking about. They actually had to come up with a term and a theory for just treating your customers properly. Because it turns out existing loyal customers buy 90% more stuff than new ones. Well over half of a company's revenue typically comes from those existing customers. Except in our case, because we get more than half of our views from people who aren't subscribed to our channel. So I'll just take a minute here while you do that.
Okay, that was actually a very interesting and fun analogy. That's true. In YouTube, contrary to common people's belief, most of your traffic usually, not always, but usually comes from unsubscribed people, which is interesting because even people with huge subscriber counts still have huge thrust of people coming who are unsubscribed. But that's good for the channel. It's not a bad thing in any way or form. It means your channel is being pushed to new people. It means you're growing, basically. You're not stagnant. So, but that's a very fun analogy. I liked it.
Please. So why aren't all companies doing this? Like, why isn't this just standard practice? Because the sad truth is that the bar is on the goddamn floor. See, most modern businesses today that you would probably recognize the name of are publicly traded companies, meaning that they have shareholders like you and me, but probably more so rich people, who have purchased shares with the expectations of those values in those companies going up. This is basically just the stock market, where your savings, if you were very lucky to have any, money are invested. Every quarter, these businesses report their numbers to investors, and to summarize a lot of economics degrees in 4 words: up, good, down, bad. But the problem with this is that it's
Okay, this is basically just a boring economy part, but we'll see where this will lead up. Hopefully this will all lead to an interesting argument. Let's see.
naturally short-sighted. You have to prioritize the profits of today and tomorrow so that your quarterly earnings can keep going up. In most cases, this usually means that companies are forced to constantly expand and push into new markets and develop new technology and buy up their competitors and just never stop until they rule the fucking world, I guess? I don't know what...
Ah, yes. The good old strategy of buying your competition so that you don't have competition at all. So honestly, I don't think Apple has done it, at least too much in the past. They're not famous for it, at least not compared with other companies where literally almost their whole business model is buying competition. Facebook. But we'll see. So basically Zuckerberg just bought every app that controlled the communication hub, you could say, technology communication. But I don't think Apple is known for that. I can't even recall, like from the tip of my tongue right now, any company that was competition and Apple bought. It might exist, but it's not known, and I can't think of it right now. But we'll see. I don't think that's a strategy Apple uses, but it is indeed something that plenty of brands in the industry do. But we'll see.
The end goal is here. And the truth is, a lot of this growth and expansion has very little to do with the customer being happy and more so about making as much money as possible. And Apple is different, kind of. Apple has done a really great job of retaining customers, and if you are an Apple person, you might already have some idea of why that might be. When doing the research for this video, we found a couple of stories about how Apple has been changing their business model to meet consumer needs. But the most impactful was definitely this one, all about how Apple is planning to integrate ChatGPT into Siri, which I don't know if that's a thing that consumers need, but it is a story that we wouldn't have come across if it weren't for the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News is an app and a website dedicated to gathering thousands of news articles all in one place to give you the full...
So let's just jump here to listen.
And you'll notice being able to take a look at articles focuses left. Feature is
this does
focusing
not matter.
of what's
This is just an
those
ad.
which
Let's
Ground
jump
News $1 a month or
Let's jump
plan
this, jump,
into
skip.
customer
skip.
capitalism, right?
Here we
Like
are.
how to treat customers properly as a theory by the economists. I want you to apply that same kind of thinking that invented that term to imagine how these companies might try and keep you interested in their product. Because customer retention is not the same as customer satisfaction. Listen, these companies are not on
Exactly, completely. I love that he made this differentiation. This is exactly what I was talking about. You could be like not satisfied because of minor inconveniences and still be loyal and stay on your brand because you'd rather not switch. This is exactly what I was thinking about when I said what I said previously, and I honestly like the way the video is approaching this problem. I'm curious to see what conclusions will they reach.
on some sort of vision quest to try and find out what truly makes their customer base ticks and to create something that is fundamentally great and improves their lives and the world around them. It is about making money while looking like you're doing those things. Today, it is not just outliers like Apple that are supposedly...
Unfortunately, this is true. Most companies, especially on the nature and environment department, they are those numbers of green and carbon emissions and yada 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 they present to us. It's more about looking good rather than actually doing the godly work they report to be doing. But and I mean, I'm not just saying this. There is plenty of evidence to this. Just look at how they removed the chargers of any iPhones. So while they claim to be doing all those great numbers in terms of carbon emission and yada yada yada, they just made one single decision which is more costly on the environment than anything else, which is to remove the charger, you know. So I mean, it it doesn't seem congruent. You tell me about it. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this.
Putting the customer first. In 2019, nearly 200 execs from major companies including Amazon, Pepsi, Walmart, and of course Apple issued a statement that business is no longer just about profit for shareholders. Rather, it is about providing genuine value to customers, communities, and employees alike, such as paying reasonable wages and supporting environmental and social causes. I have to say, if I believed anything that any of these people ever said, this would be an absolutely earth-shattering shift for the better. But when you look at how their actions play out, it tells a very different story. See, a lot of their value that they're providing when it comes to, the communities and the reasonable wages and the environmental causes or whatever, it's usually being handled by some sort of PR marketing with a corporate social responsibility report. These are well-designed pamphlets created by companies to show the impressive work that they have done to make the world.
I don't want to say bad about this video, but I'm struggling to see how does this relate to Apple brainwashing people. I mean, I know what they're trying to get into, but it's getting kind of boring. So I hope they skip this this part. Let's see where they're gonna end up with this.
World a better place, but mostly to make people feel like they're not just exploiting everyone around them in the effort to make as much money as possible. You can find these reports for basically any majorly publicly traded company just by Googling their name and then putting CSR afterwards. And these documents look really impressive. They're really long and incredibly detailed and outline how the company is progressing towards these big, important social justice goals. But they're not verified by a third party and often are built and rolled out in such a way that makes them look really good, but still allows the business to basically operate as usual. We talked about this in greater detail in our Starbucks episode. They have these sort of showy environmental announcements that are released strategically just to appease their fans enough to make them feel like they can still keep going to Starbucks even though they have done insert terrible blank thing here. And listen, Apple probably has one of the most impressive documents for this. And I don't want to say that they don't care or that these things aren't real in these documents. They 100% are. Their headquarters are 100% powered by renewable energy. But ultimately, this is just a part of their broader marketing plan to tell you the story of who they want you to think Apple as a company is. These sort of ESG reports have become basically standard practice for any big business today. But where Apple really stands out with customer retention is with their products. Apple has done a really good job of designing physical hardware that gives the customer the desired experience that they look for with a high quality product.
Although this is true about the quality, I'm struggling to see the greatness in Apple's hardware. Apple historically hasn't been the best in hardware, and I mean, don't get me wrong, their software has always been flawless and ahead, but hardware-wise, I have my doubts. I don't know if I can agree here with the video, but what you guys thinking? You guys are back at home, what do you think about this? Do you think Apple has been as good as they're claiming in hardware? I have my doubts because Apple's hardware hasn't been like perfect. We can name a few things that have happened in the past, and don't get me wrong, I know other brands have had occurrences as well. We know that Samsung's had batteries that could explode and things like that, but we also have a few incidents from Apple as well. So I'm wondering exactly how good are they in terms of hardware. We all remember the Bandgate. I don't know if I can agree here. I have my doubts.
All the while still withholding and manipulating their releases to maximize profits. A great recent example of this was the USB Type-C charge port on the iPhone 15. Apple held out on their old Lightning connector as long as they possibly could until the EU forced them to adopt a more
Yes, this is true, but they didn't hold to their proprietary ports because it was better. I mean, I think they just did it because it was bringing them money. Lightning is not necessarily better than USB-C. It is arguably worse. But we'll see what they're gonna say in the video.
more standardized technology. And Apple does.
And just a quick note, Apple themselves know. They know SPC is better and more advanced. I encourage you guys, if you have doubts and or feel like you kind of disagree with me on this, of SPC being better than Lightning, go see Apple's presentation on the first Apple's keynote, on the first iPad launched with USB-C. Because Apple, despite delaying the switch to USB-C on the iPhones for so long, on the iPads, contrary to what you might think, it was very early. And go see the presentation in which they presented. They literally say in that keynote that they've made the switch because USB-C is superior. They recognize it as superior, which is why they replaced it from Lightning to USB-C. So I remember ever since that time I was wondering to myself, if they have recognized it's better, why didn't they just switch it on the iPhone as well? So it's not something I'm just saying, Apple themselves have recognized it. But we'll see where the video goes with this.
Does this all the time. They basically invented planned obsolescence. They got rid of the headphone jack just.
Yes, we all remember the controversy in which Apple was involved about slowing down older iPhones. They were found guilty in the sense that they did slow down by underclocking the processors, but they didn't necessarily do it with evil intent, as we could say, call it like that, but rather it was to protect the batteries. This is something I can accept, but I don't think they should be doing it as a secret. I think that was the major issue, because that makes it suspicious. Why hide it if you have some good intentions in mind? You know. But I think it's just a misstep in there, and maybe you could even argue that that's something which is a consumer's responsibility. They shouldn't have just messed with it. But I don't have a strong stance on this, just stating facts. I think they just could have handled the situation and taken better decisions. But we'll see what the video has to say about this.
To upsell everybody on their pods, and instead of keeping the design similar year to year to save money, each model year is just noticeably different to be recognized as the latest model to command a higher price tag. With things like that, you would think that people would probably leave, but they don't. And that's because Apple does the products really, really well, and they have a few tricky tricks to make sure that you don't leave. See, I'm an Apple person. I got my MacBook here, and I'm reading this teleprompter off of my iPhone. And I've tried to go and use Android before, and I just ended up ultimately coming back because Apple knows what they're doing. Those yearly releases with the underwhelming advancements to each model year, that's actually on purpose. See, Apple is always the last company to adopt technology as it comes onto the market. They wait until a technology has been proven for the most part, or at least been shown to have promise with consumers. And then they aim to improve upon it. And this is actually a pretty great business model that I fundamentally believe in. Toyota does this with their vehicles a lot too. See,
This is absolutely Apple's business model for a long time. However, I do have to say that this is the type of business model that not every brand can do. I mean, you can get away with this because if you're Apple. If you're not Apple, you hardly will ever get away with this. If you're releasing the same things as the competition, but at a later time and at a later date, you better do something great. Otherwise, you will not be able to. It's not even about defeating the competition, but getting into the competition at all, because you're coming in late. So if you're not Apple and you're producing something better than the competition, but at a later date, it will be hard. And I would even argue that lately Apple has been doing that, still releasing things at a later date, but doing them not better than the competition. And I could name a few things. For example, the app drawer. The app drawer is literally came later and it's not better. The icons coloring, which is also new, something new, and it's not better. It literally just forces the color over all the icons. So Apple has been releasing a lot of personalization things at a later date, and they are not objectively better than the competition. If anything, they're just the same. So Apple has been in a kind of more experimental phase. They're not releasing as much of cooked features that they know are really tested and ready for the public. Don't know why they're switching to that ways, but at the end of the day, it's just what we've been talking about so far, which is they have a very loyal base, so they are now free to do these types of things and get away with it. But let's see what the video has to say. And for you guys at home, please do let me know your thoughts on the chat, or if you're watching this as a pre-recorded video, on the comment section down below.
Have all Apple products because they work the way that they're supposed to. They rarely have technical issues, but as many Apple users know, this controlled approach also keeps you trapped in their ecosystem. Apple products only really play with other Apple products, and once you've used their products, it's kind of hard to go back. It feels like a mild hostage situation, but it's not just the technology that makes it hard to leave Apple. Apple has some of the best branding out there. I mean, people know an Apple ad.
It's true. If we ignore that Apple products are actually good and they are useful things and have a purpose and usability, if we think of it just as, let's say, accessories to wear on the body, once you're using Apple, for you to change for anything else, it's a downgrade effectively in terms of branding. It's like you're using for something with a very well-known and valuable brand to something from a supermarket brand. Not just to be very extreme, but that makes it a lot of a downgrade regardless of the usability of the device. And that's another toolkit that Apple has to lock you down into the walled garden.
Advertisement before they even see the logo. And with this sleek, modern, minimalist design, they have created the Apple person identity. They want you to feel like a sophisticated, successful, well-connected individual when you hold their product. But one of the most powerful and interesting qualities of an Apple person is that they are not an Android person. You probably remember those famous early advertisements with the PC and the Apple guy.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC.
But that ad is a metaphor for a very real tactical branding strategy that a lot of brands use nowadays. We see this really clearly with the Pepsi-Coke divide. Anyone who's honest with themselves knows that there is functionally no difference between Coke and Pepsi. Blind taste tests have actually shown that consumers prefer the taste of Pepsi, but Coke is...
Well, it seems like they're aiming at a classic example. Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. Same drink, same flavor, just different branding. I suppose they're about to show a test that will expose that branding does play a key role in how you perceive things, despite being tasty or useful. This is gonna be interesting. I love these types of tests. Let's see what they're gonna say and what conclusions are gonna arise from this.
Still the more successful brand. And yet, 9 in 10 Pepsi and Coke drinkers remain loyal to their chosen drink. Even people who hardly consume soda at all have this weirdly visceral reaction to even the thought of consuming the other brand. And Apple just leans into this 100%. They've gone as far as to make it harder for iPhone users to communicate with Android users. This branding is so deep in the Apple lore that now it's like a way to tell people that they're broke. Like, you're so poor that you have the green text bubbles when I'm chatting to you.
You have an Android?
Yes.
An Android? Never mind. I can't do this. I'm so sorry.
Because I have an Android? Wait, what?
This actually makes me feel kind of bad because I like to razz our project manager all the time because she is like a staunchly...
Although it makes no sense, it's true. If you have an iPhone, you're seen as rich because despite anything, a rich person wouldn't buy a cheaper phone. It's complicated. It's a complicated social issue that extends to any product really in society. But is this fixable? Is this even Apple's fault to begin with? Hard to tell. I would say no, but that's just my personal view. We'll see what they have to say in the video.
PC, Android person, and you have problems with your friggin' tech all the time. And another little sidetrack here that I thought was just incredible is that this Apple main character energy is so unshakable that even in movies...
Okay, yes, when it comes to Apple main character energy, sorry, this is 100% Apple's fault. Apple does work on building this main character energy, either by ignoring that the competition exists at all, pretending like Xiaomi and Samsung doesn't exist at all, and even another thing which I think is what they're about to say, which is the fact that in movies, most of the time, the good guys have iPhones and the bad guys are allowed to have iPhones. I think that's what they're about to tell, and all this amounts to Apple building that main character energy. And yes, I do hold Apple accountable for this 100%, and yes, I do believe it's one of the bad things that they promote. I don't find it fair, and it completely pushes the loyalty in terms of the emotional side of it, rather than the actual useful side of it. But it is what it is.
The bad guy never has an iPhone.
Apple, they let you use iPhones in movies, and this is very pivotal if you're ever watching a mystery movie, bad guys cannot have iPhones on camera. Every single filmmaker who has a bad guy in their movie, it's supposed to be a secret, wants to murder me right now.
Entire videos have already been made on the absolute genius of Apple's branding, so we're not going to get too into the weeds here, but the bottom line is, it worked. 92% of the people who have iPhones right now intend to stay iPhone users. Almost a third said it was because they were too tied into Apple's ecosystem, or it was just too much of a hassle to switch operating systems.
That's a lot. 92% of people using iPhones wouldn't switch or don't want to switch. That's a lot. And it's understandable, because if we ignore, let's put aside for a second all the strategies that we've been discussing so far about Apple pinning you down to their ecosystem. Let's just focus on usability. Apple's ecosystem works perfectly. Currently, there is not one single ecosystem which can do all the synchronicity things that Apple's ecosystem can do. Either the speed of transferring files, the availability of cloud storage, everything. Not one can do it as perfectly as Apple does. And there's reasons for this, of course, because Apple has more control over the either software and both software and hardware. There's reasons for this. However, the reality as a consumer is that, and that's most certainly for sure, it's a factor in terms of usability that locks you down in their ecosystem. And I would say that this is the positive way of locking you down. If you're locking down people because your product is so good people don't want to leave, that's good. But if we look at the other side and bring back all the strategies that Apple is using and which are more emotional, then we have to see which side is actually playing a bigger role, because maybe we'll find something surprising. But we'll see.
And if you think that this kind of irrational, fierce loyalty to brands is powerful now, it's actually going to get worse. There is talk from big names that some point soon-ish, it will just be the norm, even mandatory, for companies to report customer retention metrics alongside the usual numbers. And there might be some good that comes out of this change for sure, but it's also going to give brands more power across the board to create products and incentive structures that keep you from leaving. On top of this, we seem to be more blindly brand loyal than ever before. With people feeling more isolated and more stretched financially, and with so much chaos going on in the world right now, people are running to their favorite brands for that fleeting feeling of comfort. We offer them the fruits of our labor, and in return we get rituals that bind us together, holy days, and the promise of salvation. We're told that if we just give enough of our dollars to the right God, we can save ourselves, or our country, or the planet. And this is why it hurts so bad when we're betrayed.
Well, this is more of a societal perspective, the one he is trying to portray, and it's a more world spread problem rather than tech related. But I will not comment on it in the sense that I don't think I have enough built opinion, but sure, it's something interesting to see.
We think of these brands as being on our side, part of our tribe, our saviors, our very identity, and then suddenly they...
Oh, 100%. In terms of identity, a lot of people take using an iPhone as their identity, and they feel like a part of them would be taken if they were to switch brands. And that's part of the uneasiness that people feel. This is why there's so little percentage of people switching either from Android to iOS or from iOS to Android, because it's already a part of their identity. If they were to switch, it would take them months to adapt, and not even from a practical perspective, but just a feeling perspective. For them to feel as good as they felt using something that they identified with will take a lot of time. Even if it was 100% the same functionality, just being a different brand, it might not only make them enter the new universe with a different approach, not as excited, but also it will take them some time to get used to it. But I guess that's just human nature. That's not really something to blame Apple for, but it is what it is.
We go off script, and it's like we've been stabbed in the back, and our sense of self is sort of shattered. They partner with the wrong influencer, or they break off the partnership with that said influencer, or back the wrong country or politician. So we bring out the pitchforks and take our businesses to a different mega corporation that quietly hates us just as much as the other one did. They're just a little better at hiding it. Because for all of their talk of supporting values and those big CSR documents, it's not about us or making the world a better place. It's all about making money. Just think about how pretty much every big international corporate chain flies the rainbow flag in June, except where that's an unpopular opinion to have. They don't care about any of this stuff, and it shouldn't surprise us when they show us their true colors, or the lack thereof in this case. But we also have to ask ourselves, do we want these people to be in charge of our social change? Because that's where this is headed. Major corporations are now openly talking about how they have a responsibility to change the world. And I don't think that that's what any of us actually want. If you want real change, don't put your hope into these brands. Don't allow them to form your identity and take the place of a genuine human connection, because that's exactly what they're trying to do. The more fractured we are, the less connected we are to our neighborhoods, the more that we'll rely on these big brands to form our sense of self. And we really, really can't afford that. So listen, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more content from us and our channel, make sure that you're subscribed, because we release.
Okay, let's stop it right here. The video is about to finish. So basically, I feel like in the end the video kind of got sidetracked from what's the major point of discussion was. But I suppose maybe it could be the overall theme of this channel, because I have never interacted with this channel before. So maybe they are a channel which deals with societal problems, and that's why for the last 5 to 10 minutes of the video they were leaning more into the societal perspective. But overall, I'd say that I do agree with the fact that a lot of these companies have been taking responsibility in shaping how the future will look like, and I don't think that's necessarily because they want to. I would say that they will inevitably do so, because they're tech companies and our world is becoming increasingly techy in the sense that nowadays everyone has a tech device in their pockets. In workforce and everything, it's tech related. Machines are everywhere, making work easier and easier, so the world is becoming more techified. That's undeniable, and that's why these companies are stepping in to shape how things will end up. But overall, I'd say that companies just like Apple have been doing a very good job at shaping things so far, bringing features that are useful to people, making lives easier, whether it's writing emails, sending messages. I do have to say, of course, this is just not saying good things about brands. I have to say bad things, because there are bad things, and we can say that sometimes they take decisions that limit communication in between people, and that's not good. The perfect world would be for communication to be easily achievable in between brands, in between apps, something universal. But as we know, that's something hard to achieve. Not impossible, but it requires cooperation in between brands. We do see a lot of cooperation in between Samsung and Google, which is amazing to see, and it makes software very, very optimized, and that's something that brings it a little more closer in terms of ecosystem to the Apple's ecosystem. Because it makes it more perfect, and as we know, that's why Apple is able to build such perfect gadgets that work so well with each other, because they control the ecosystem, the software and the hardware. So if companies that are managing different parts of the device, that it's an Android phone, start to work together towards something meaningful, we can achieve that type of coordination and go heads with Apple, head to toe with them. And I would say that overall the video kind of ran away a little bit from the facts from the question of whether Apple brainwashes the fans or not. I would say the conclusion is that Apple does not brainwash fans in the sense that they're not a brand that it's trash and people just buy for status. I do not believe that. I think iPhones are good devices and have been for a long time, and have even been the best devices for a very long time in the past as well. Are they different now? Absolutely. Are they as good as they used to be compared to the competition? Not at all. Are they more balanced in terms of competition? Of course they are. And in part, not only it's not just iPhone's fault in the sense that iPhone just hasn't been receiving more features. No, it's also that the competition has improved a lot as well. So maybe Apple just needs to run a little bit faster, but they just don't want to because they feel like the crown, the king's seat, is guaranteed, I'd say. But of course, these are my personal opinions. As always, I want to hear all your guys' thoughts in the chat if you're watching this live stream, or in the comment section down below if you're either shy or you're watching this as a pre-recorded video. So this was all for today. Basically, this was today's debate for today's live stream. Thank you for everyone at home who got to watch until this time. I appreciate that a lot. I hope it was fun. I hope it was an interesting topic to discuss. I'll be picking a new topic for next live stream, and hopefully you can have another open space for debate once again about how the world will be changed, specifically the tech world. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. I'm Techinthehouse, and I'll be sending you guys to the space screen, and soon the live stream will collapse. Don't forget to leave your likes, share and subscribe. I'm Techinthehouse, and thank you for staying. I see you next time. This live stream will collapse in 10 seconds. Prepare the countdown.
Apple is a
10, 9, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.